Okay, there's an old joke. Two elderly women are at a Catskill mountain resort, and one of them says, "Boy, the food here at this place is really terrible." And the other one says, "Yeah, I know, in such small portions." Well, that's essentially how I feel about life. Full of loneliness and misery and suffering and happiness, and it's all over much too quickly. Well, I thought the joke was funny. Um, Welcome to It's Always Sunny in New York. No, it's always sunny in Hollywood. That quote was from Annie Hall, which is Woody Allen's most famous movie. Today we're going to be talking about his second most famous movie, Crimes and Misdemeanors. I'm your host, Red.
I am Lugia,
My
and
name
I didn't even know that was supposed to be a joke, to be honest. I thought you were actually like saying the quote like straight.
That was the quote. What do you mean?
I didn't even
There's
know
an
that was a joke. I didn't even think there was a
I the,
punchline
the
to it.
first word I said was there's an old joke. One of them thinks the food sucks, and the other one's like, yeah, it does suck, and they give us so little. Yeah, that's what life is, lonely, misery, suffering, unhappiness, and it's over way too quickly. For all the bitching, no one wants it to end quick.
Well, that's just true, and it hurts.
my name is Patty, and I don't know if we're doing Woody Allen quotes. Don't talk to me about the Earth. I just spent all day hauling it around. I don't know. Ants is the only other movie I've seen with Woody Allen in it.
I don't think any of us have any news today, right?
No.
Want to just jump right into the movie?
Ed first.
All right. So, Crimes and Misdemeanors came out in 1989. Stars Woody Allen, Martin Landau, Alan Alda, Mia Farrow, Angelica Huston, and a few other people, but those are the main voices. Many people consider it Woody Allen's greatest film. I'm inclined to agree. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Landau for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. Yeah, so some fun trivia about the production is after viewing the first cut of the movie, Allen decided to throw out the entire first act and call actors back for reshoots and decide to focus on the what turned out to be the central story. For as meticulous of a writer Woody Allen is, he seems to be much more willing to deviate from his script compared to most people. I remember listening to an interview with an actress once, and she once said Alan basically just put the camera on her and says, "You can say whatever you want," and she's like, "What do you mean whatever you want?" I was like, "I mean you have a script, but you don't have to follow it if you don't want to." And he was like, "That's," and she thought it was insane, given like this guy's been nominated for like a million like writing awards, and he would just let people not follow his script. But yeah,
Huh.
surprisingly loose director, all things considered.
I feel like no other director could really pull something off like that.
Thing is, Woody Allen, if you guys don't know, is he's one of the rare directors who has an incredibly fast rate of output. As in, he's made like a movie for almost every year of his life. Sometimes he'll skip a year, but other times he'll do 2 movies a year. So it basically bounces out to one movie a year. For like 50 years or something. I've seen like 21 of his movies. I think I'm not even like close to done. Like he's made that many movies.
Are they all
The
good? Do
shocking part
some
is like
vary in terms of quality, or what's the
I'll be
verdict on
honest,
most of them?
most of them are pretty good. A lot of people say that after, I believe, Blue Jasmine, which came out in 2013, a lot of people think that after Blue Jasmine, he kind of fell off and he kind of, but still, from like 1969 to 2013, most of his movies are good. That's a crazy streak, am I right?
That's decades worth of content all being like generally pretty well received. Like you that's honestly very impressive.
What's
Yeah,
your favorite and least favorite?
My favorite is probably Crimes and Misdemeanors, the movie we're talking about today. I also feel like that one probably like encapsulates his work the best because it's a pretty funny movie, but it's also got like a lot of dark existential stuff. My least favorite is probably Manhattan, which is actually one of his most beloved movies. I might have just seen that in a bad mood though. As far as I know, it's his worst movie, but it's like the one I like the least, but most people seem to love it, so I might rewatch it one day and think it's actually pretty good. So who knows? I don't know what like the consensus of his worst movie is. The consensus of his best movie is Annie Hall. Annie Hall is basically like considered the grandfather of the romantic comedy. It's probably one of the most influential movies of all time. That's another thing, Woody Allen. I would argue he's one of the most influential writers of all time, at least comedy writers. So many things I remember thinking like, oh, The Simpsons must have pioneered this, or Seinfeld must have pioneered this, and I watched a Woody Allen movie 20 years before, and I was like, never mind, Woody did it. Okay, cool. And then like I do research, and yeah, He's one of those guys who he likes writing so much that like he plays around with like the form a lot. I mean, that even includes this movie. So this movie is called Crimes and Misdemeanors. So I don't know how familiar you are with books, particularly classic books, but the title is a riff on Crime and Punishment. And I don't know if you guys have read Crime and Punishment. Maybe you had to read it for school or
I'm
something.
familiar with the
I
name, I've
read it.
just
I
never
have
read it.
not had to read it. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm familiar with the title, but don't ask me what it's about.
Okay, so just to give you a quick rundown, it's basically about a guy who like have you guys seen like a Paul Schrader movie like Pickpocket? No, like I don't know, Light Sleeper or American Gigolo or
I
something
don't
like
think
that.
so.
No.
Okay. Or this movie Pickpocket. I think I might have talked about Pickpocket. All right. Well, basically, Paul Schrader's remade this movie like a million times. I forgot who directed Pickpocket, but that's also sort of an adaptation of. So Crime and Punishment. This guy basically he murders someone, and then he's sort of racked with guilt almost. Sort of like falls in mental anguish and moral dilemmas
So,
of
like,
this guy
takes
who
to heart.
plans to kill these people, and he sort of convinced himself that certain crimes are justifiable, to sort of remove obstacles to sort of achieve. So basically, he kind of goes through a similar thing that Judah in Crimes and Misdemeanors goes through, except with Crime and Punishment, he does get overwhelmed by guilt. And so, sort of, Woody Allen was sort of like wanted to sort of make a counter argument to that, because I guess he has a much more cynical, sort of nihilistic worldview. He kind of was arguing that I do think that some people probably could weather the storm of guilt and be fine even after the horrible things they did. Thought that was like an interesting sort of question, but like yeah, a lot of what Woody Allen likes to do is he sort of likes to. A lot of his movies are sort of like they either directly like to play with the form of things, like a deconstructing here. It's sort of about a writer who like it's kind of like adaptation almost, where like it plays with sort of the form of movies and whatnot. It kind of gets meta and whatnot. But then you also got like crimes and misdemeanors and movies like that, where it's almost like a direct response to like other movies or other like famous works of art. That is sort of the thematic contention of crimes and misdemeanors. What if Dostoevsky was wrong, and if someone can cheat on their wife for who knows how long and not feel any guilt, who's to say that they can't get over any type of guilt? We can get more into the movie later, but that's basically Woody Allen's sort of gimmick almost. He's a writer that likes to play with the form, kind of like Tarantino, kind of like Charlie Kaufman. But he also likes to sort of make direct challenges to some of the greatest works of art ever made, and arguably he himself makes some of the greatest works of art ever made through his rebuttals or conversations with other artwork. Yeah, and he explores his ideas a couple times. When we get to the end with the other movies that are this is similar to, I'll talk about the other Woody Allen movies that are kind of similar. But yeah, I guess I should go into a plot breakdown before we talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Basically, this movie is split up into two storylines. One is Judah Rosenthal, who is this ophthalmologist. He's basically a doctor, and Clifford Stern, who is a documentary filmmaker. And Judah's whole plot is he's basically having an affair with a flight attendant, and the flight attendant wants him to leave his wife, and eventually, and he doesn't want to. There's like at least like three scenes where he's at like a dinner party, then he gets a call, and he's like, "Oh, I have to take this call." And he's like, "Shut up! Why are you calling me here?" It's like I don't know. It's kind of after the third time it happened, I started cracking up because I was like, "All right, it's funny how many times it happens." But yeah, basically, he's having an affair. His mistress wants him to leave his wife, or and threatens to expose it, and he's like, "I can't, afford my reputation." So he eventually has her killed, and has to rack. He sort of racks himself with guilt for the rest of the movie until the final scene, which we'll get to later. And then we have the Cliff storyline. This is the Woody Allen role. Funny enough, this was my favorite part of the movie the first time I saw it. Although, once you get to the ending, obviously, I feel like the heart of the film is more rooted in the Judas side. But yeah. So the Cliff, much more comedic, much more loose. This a guy kind of in a marriage that he doesn't really care for, but he does like his was it his niece or daughter? I can't remember.
His niece.
Niece, yeah. But anyway, he's trying to make this film about his brother-in-law Lester. And he's also trying to woo this girl, but ultimately, he has faith in his art. He decides to not, sell out, do a puff piece or whatever, and makes his movie sort of comparing Lester to Mussolini and other dictators and whatnot, egomaniacs, and eventually he gets fired for this, obviously. Basically, he loses. Cliff's whole thing is he loses. His marriage falls apart. He gets fired from his artistic ambitions, and the girl he likes marries the person he hates. It's almost kind of interesting where like we basically follow a guy who's like somewhat respectable and he loses, and then we follow a guy who's somewhat detestable and wins, and then they meet at the end and they sort of have a conversation, and it's almost like a debate about faith and believing in a higher narrative or believing in like art, that life has purpose or there's karma or whatever, and someone who doesn't believe it. And there's a lot of discussions with like rabbis about God or whatnot. You have that one scene with Judah, remembering his family, his aunt who's more atheistic versus his more religious uncle or something, and they're debating, and there's sort of like that running theme of like people who put their faith on a higher power versus people who are more material and self-serving. And I don't know if you guys noticed it, but they actually visually indicate this, where all the characters who wear glasses believe in some sort of higher power, whether it be God or art or some sort of
Like moral structure, like the one guy at the when he was talking to Judah for his eye doctor appointment.
yeah. So it's all that stuff. And the ones that are much more practical, much more self-serving, they don't wear glasses, and you can even see a transformation where when Judah is racked with guilt, all those scenes he's wearing glasses, but by the end of the movie he's not wearing glasses, and same with the Mia Farrow character, the Hallie Reed, where she is wearing glasses for most of the movie, but by the end she's not wearing glasses. And but Woody Allen, he is wearing glasses, and the rabbi, which is the most interesting thing to me, was he's wearing glasses the whole movie. At the end of the movie, he's blind. So it's almost like being blinded by faith. I feel like is almost kind of like the commentary there. Although at the same time, like he does have that ending monologue about we're all faced with life with agonizing decisions and moral choices, and grand scale or small scale, but he does make this statement about our capacity of love is what gives meaning to the universe and whatnot. It's kind of like a dark black pilling movie, but it does like find admiration in faith, which I thought was interesting because I feel like most other nihilistic movies, they're much more like, huh, you believe in religion, like they're very smug about it. They're very like, oh, you have faith. In this movie, it was like that's kind of a good thing, and it's almost like depressing. I feel like it's a movie that both argues for faith and argues against it at the same time, which is interesting to me. That's what I thought about the movie. What did you guys think?
I'll start off. So, to compare it to something, I found the two stories very comparable to The Godfather Part 2 with Judah and Cliff. Mainly when it comes to like their highs and lows throughout the movie. So like when Judah hires Jack to kill the woman he's having an affair with, that's his low point, and he learns about that and he's like all depressed and he's like I can't comprehend this. I need a minute. Whereas Cliff gets with Holly and they're getting it off really well. They're talking about the documentary he's making. They're going on a date, eating Indian food. They're having a good time. And then by the end, those two mentalities are reversed. And we see that progression happen in real time. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I know I told you guys that these were like some of those other movies. There was like two storylines that are like kind of their own thing before it comes together at the end, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that you actually like the fact that they were paralleled so strongly.
There was one connection between them that I caught before the end, and that was the rabbi is a patient of Judah. Otherwise, yeah, they're pretty much their own thing.
Yeah, their own thing, but they're almost like sort of thematic parallels, and then at the end it kind of like comes together. So, I guess unlike say Chungking Express or some of the other movies we've done with this sort of format, it kind of like it feels much more like tightly put together. I guess like even though they're two like mostly separate stories, by the end you're like, okay, I actually like get why they did it this way, and it's like
I
I'm
think it
glad
also
that
helped that they
actually
were
worked for
pretty
you.
evenly distributed.
And they don't even
So it
like
wasn't
know
like
each
one
other. They're like
story.
distant family anyway. They just kind of know each other by name. And Judah mentions like, "Oh, I've been told you're a filmmaker," but that's it. They don't have like any strong connections to each other.
Okay, so you got any, I guess, more thoughts? What'd you think of the themes, or what'd you think of like? I feel like this is gonna be much more of a theme-based like discussion, but like, what did you guys think about all like the sort of discussions on like faith and all that stuff?
I
I
was
think
more
that was some
so
pretty.
attracted to the idea of morality and guilt, especially by the end. Like, if we want to talk about the ending, we can. If not,
Yeah.
I'll save my thoughts.
No, the ending. Let's go to the ending. Yeah.
Okay, so with Judah, with him like feeling guilty about having essentially non-directly killed a person and having that carry with him throughout the film, then all of a sudden it feels like he's washed clean and he doesn't feel any guilt and he's like never been happier. I think that hit so well because like any other movie,
I was so shocked like when I saw
yeah,
that. I was like, whoa, what?
any other movie there would be some sort of repentance, right? In fact, he
Yeah.
even mentions that in his monologue, but no.
It happens in Crime and Punishment. Like that's kind of the thing where like,
I feel like had this been any other movie where this wasn't a theme, I would have been caught so off guard. But I think it actually fit in with everything, so I was kind of like, okay, I can see where you're going with this.
yeah. And this watch through, it kind of like was thinking about like how we don't see him have any real guilt for cheating on his wife, like not that much. And I that kind of like made me like kind of realize at the end it was like, oh, like he probably probably similar thing happened when he like first cheated on his wife, where he felt guilty, but then after a while he stopped really giving a shit. Um,
Granted, the case
that's
here is a little more extreme, but I get what you mean.
I feel like it kind of helped me kind of like almost rationalize or like understand it a bit more. Where like I'm like, you can do like some pretty terrible things and ultimately get over it. And I'm like, who's to say like that doesn't apply to murder? Because here's the thing: we obviously never hear about the stories of someone who commits murder and gets away with it because they got away with it. But like, I don't know. Like, I mean, every once in a while you hear about like someone who like killed someone like in their 20s and then like when they were 70 they finally got caught, and like it's like those 50 years they just lived with that perfectly fine. I was like, huh, I don't know. And it feels a little bit meta almost, where like almost a documentary filmmaker. That's another thing. A documentary filmmaker is like telling this guy was like, well, that's not like a satisfying narrative, and it was like, well, that's not real, and it was like, yeah, I was like, wait a second, like this filmmaker is trying to create a narrative out of real life, and then this guy who's in basically like a classic like movie plot. It was like, well, that's not what real life. Like I don't know. There's a lot of like the more I
A lot of
think about
like
this movie, it
irony
feels like
to
the
it.
more layers they are. Yeah, it feels like there's like a lot of layers to it. Where it's like,
Like how the guy
yeah,
that
a
Cliff
documentary
was like
filmmaker that's trying to find the
interviewing,
truth, but he also believes in like a higher power. Is like that's kind of like a lot of interesting
and
elements
like how the
there.
guy
Yeah,
that Cliff was interviewing, like he like praises life and he talks about like all these values that he has, and then he just commits suicide. Going to
to compare it
Cliff,
to real life, Anthony Bourdain, may he rest in peace. But Anthony Bourdain, he always like sort of talked about like, oh, this is how you live life, and he still killed himself. These are things I think about a lot often, where it's like, oh, like this guy's almost like a self help guru, and he kills his life, and it was like that's there's something like more going on that I don't know I'll probably never
like
understand fully,
at
but
face value, that sounds like a contradiction, but yeah, there might be more going on. And going to Cliff, where we see him basically at his lowest by the end of the movie. I thought that was really interesting because aside from cheating on his wife as well, he's genuinely like a nice guy for the most part, and he wants to help out Holly, albeit also for sex, but mostly like he doesn't like Lester. Lester is kind of an asshole, but
yeah.
but when he gets over his head, that's when things start falling apart.
This was my first like real introduction to both Crime and Punishment as well as Woody Allen. I quite liked it. Like I said, I thought the two storylines were pretty interesting in the way they contrasted and how they tied together at the end. I also found it pretty interesting that, with Judah's story, he's been doing this for like 2 years and then he starts feeling guilty about it. Whereas with Cliff, he's kind of starting to cheat on his wife. And I thought that was pretty interesting, the two sides of how far along they are in it. I also really liked the intersplicing of classic movie footage to convey their emotions. Mainly Cliff, because, he's the one who's interested in movies. But for the ending, so you told us to go in and to not expect a real satisfying ending. I don't know if this is just because of the last few times you've told us about this, but I was fully expecting one of them to just like suddenly die.
That's fair.
So it was refreshing that nobody died, I guess.
Well, someone died, but
Well, yes, but I
obviously,
mean not one of the main characters. You know what I mean? No, it was basically what I took was like it was basically like a therapy session. Like he confessed his sins and he's like, you know what? I feel pretty good about myself right now.
So, I don't know if you saw Better Call Saul. What's funny is that that show kind of has like a similar conversation. It lands on a different conclusion almost, but like at 2 points in the show, a character talks about how someone they know died, and they think about him every day, and then one day they realize that they hadn't thought about them all day, and that terrified them. So first it's just like, oh, just like a loved one who died. The second one is obviously like someone, they got someone killed, and it's almost them trying to like tell their wife like, oh no, like the guilt will pass. It's trying to be comforting almost, where like the guilt will pass, but it's kind of like almost disturbing, where she's like disturbed by the fact that eventually the guilt might pass. And yeah, and kind of the whole ending of the show is almost about how like Saul falls into that sort of persona where he's like completely like disconnected from any of the guilt he may feel, and then he's kind of forced to face the music. And I thought that was kind of interesting because almost like felt like actually, when I first saw this movie, I think it might have been before Saul ended, but watching it like this time now, I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. It's like a similar sort of conversation happening there about, time and whatnot. Also Radio Days, yeah, I think I mentioned earlier I was gonna talk about other movies that are kind of similar to this. So there's a movie called Radio Days by Woody Allen. So that one is not a black pill sort of movie. It's just a movie about Woody Allen's childhood, about except it's about there's a thematic through line about radio, about how before TV, he grew up in like before TV was really a thing, how like he would always listen to the radio and all this stuff, and now in like the 80s when he made the movie, radio is effectively dead. It's not like it was before, but he was like, and he made the movie almost to sort of immortalize his memory. But the at the ending monologue, he's like, I'll never forget all the joy these people brought me. But then he says, but honestly, but if I'm being completely honest with myself, every day their voices grow a little bit dimmer. That movie is not like a black pilling, but I always thought it was interesting. It was like, one, insane line to end your movie on. That was the last line of the fucking movie, where it was like, where it's this big romantic like celebration of his childhood, and then he was like, honestly, every day my childhood fades just a little bit more, and I slowly forget. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man. But like, this is kind of a running idea in a lot of his movies, where like you will just forget shit eventually, and like that one was sort of like forgetting kind of like the happy memories, but this one was sort of more about forgetting about your guilt. But like, I don't know, I feel like that's an interesting running idea in his movies. And I wonder if that's why he makes a movie for every year of his life, just as like a way to almost document his thoughts, because he knows that eventually he's gonna forget it, which is a kind of terrifying idea, but I don't know.
Well, granted, he never killed anybody, but
It's just like an interesting idea that like a lot of his movies kind of explore this idea of like forgetting, and also a lot of his movies explore escapism. My second favorite movie from him is this movie called The Purple Rose of Cairo. This movie is not blackpilling at all. In fact, this is probably going to be the next Woody Allen movie I'm going to recommend. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but it's probably going to happen eventually. And you guys are going to be so shocked when you watch it, because you're like, Crimes and Misdemeanors was the most nihilistic blackpilling shit I've ever seen in my life, and then I'm going to watch this, and you're like, this is the happiest movie I've seen in my life. So he contains multitudes, but like, yeah, Purple Rose of Cairo and Hannah and Her Sisters feels like a prototype for Crimes and Misdemeanors. Honestly, they are so similar that I'm probably never going to recommend it, because your guys are going to watch it and you're going to be like, this feels like a prototype for Crimes and Misdemeanors. But Crimes and Misdemeanors, Purple Rose of Cairo, they both have this conclusion where like about how comforting watching movies are. We're like, cause Hannah and Her Sisters is about a guy who's like paranoid about death. Like he's I think he maybe has like a whatchamacallit, I think someone he knows like died very young or something. So he's like, he sort of gets anxious about death, and then like, I don't know, movies sort of keep his mind off it, gives it purpose almost. Purple Rose of Cairo is also like someone kind of has like a shitty life, but they watch movies kind of escape from it, and then like the movie character comes out of the picture, and he's like, she has this like fairy tale type story. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. Where because this movie also talks about narratives being sort of comforting, because the guy's like, oh, you watch too many movies, because the Woody Allen character, he's like trying to Lester, he's trying to like rationalize not Lester, what's his name?
Cliff.
Cliff, yeah, Cliff. He's trying to rationalize the story they just got told, where he's like, well, satisfying narratives and whatnot. So I was like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting that in this movie he's sort of like rejecting giving you a satisfying narrative, but like his other movies are actively saying, no, satisfying narratives are good, and it kind of gives my life meaning. Which is kind of funny because again, that's kind of another thing here where he's kind of rebuting having faith, but at the same time, he's also saying that no, I think faith is good. So it's like I don't know. I feel like this movie explores contradictions a lot, as does his whole filmography. The movie this is most similar to in Woody Allen's filmography, though, next to Hannah and Her Sisters, is Match Point because it's straight up the Judah story is pretty much the exact same. It is what if the Judah story, but it was like a straightforward thriller instead of this dark satire. Where I watched Match Point this week to prepare for this episode. So let me tell you what Match Point is. Is basically this guy cheating on his wife and then he kills his mistress and he gets away with it. Now does that sound familiar?
Except without all of the subtle
Hmm.
nuance.
No. No, I would say Match Point is one of his best movies. It just explores in a different way, which is interesting. And I don't know how to actually explain it. How these movies basically have the exact same plot, but they're completely different. It's fascinating. But that one is talking a little bit more about luck, which is kind of interesting. Because like in Crimes and Misdemeanors, it's almost like this guy doesn't put his faith on a higher power. But Match Point is almost talking about how like some people like there's like an element of luck. Like Match Point is almost exploring just getting lucky almost. It kind of reminds me of that Joe Pesci argument where he's like, the hard work is a factor in life, but like you very much do have to get lucky and whatnot. And Match Point is almost like is basically about a guy who gets lucky, but like it's not in sort of the positive context we always associate getting lucky with. Whereas more of like this one was a much more dark thing because like in Match Point, he almost gets caught, and the only reason he doesn't is basically just because of blind luck. But it's like blind luck in a very interesting way, which I'm not going to reveal because even knowing this, like it's not going to spoil it. But like I don't know. I would recommend you guys watch Match Point one day. Just a fair warning, it is not funny. There are no jokes in it. It is a straightforward thriller. A very Alfred Hitchcock. I guess the last point of comparison I want to bring up is two comedies which are not they aren't black pilling, well not exactly, but one is Broadcast News, which is sort of a love triangle about a dude who is in love with his best friend, and they work in the entertainment industry. They work for the news station, and her best friend sort of falls in love with this dude that the main character Albert Brooks hates. Is sort of what the like Cliff storyline is like. So it's kind of like the Cliff storyline, except it's done a little bit differently. I think you guys would like it. It's not a black pilling movie. It's actually just like a kind of cool comedy. Holly Hunter's in it, so Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks. And speaking of Albert Brooks, we've talked about Albert Brooks once before on the show in Modern Romance. Did any of you guys think this movie was a little bit similar to Modern Romance?
A
Just a
smidge,
tiny
From
but
bit.
the Cliff storyline, yes, because he's making a movie.
I don't think like these movies are similar at all thematically. I thought they were funny in a similar way. Like Hulk yelling, like I don't know. I thought it was just a little bit funny with like the Hulk yelling, and then like there's a scene where he's like showing his boss it, and it's like and he cuts to him and Mussolini, and I was like, I don't know. It cracked me up in like a similar way where he's like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" Did you guys think this movie was funny? That's a question. I actually
yeah,
want to ask you.
definitely. Well, in some
Okay.
areas. I was more so like gut punched by the ending, but it was a gut punch in a way where I'm like, that was really fucking good, but holy shit. That
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
hurts to think about.
And I want you guys to know, you guys had warning. When I watched this movie, I was just like, I think Woody Allen movies are funny. I'm in the mood to laugh. So I put this on. I was like, yeah, this is pretty funny. Then the ending happened. I was like, what the fuck?
Granted,
I'd like just sit alone in a room for an hour just to think about that. I was like,
okay,
what the
it's
fuck?
not the ending is nowhere near as tragic as say Chinatown, but it still like kind of presents itself in a way where it gets you thinking and it's like, man, that's it. Just
Yeah,
man.
yeah. So yeah, this is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I actually have it in my top four on Letterboxd. Actually, I have it on my top one in Letterboxd. Holy shit, I did not Yeah, okay. So technically speaking, in the top 10 list I have on Letterboxd, I put this as my favorite movie of all time. So that's kind of funny. I talked a lot this episode, so I'm sure you can figure why it's probably my favorite movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah, my
I
top
definitely
three.
enjoyed this too. But
Yeah, my
It
top three
was a good
movies on
time.
Letterboxd are. Yeah, my top movies on Letterboxd are Crimes and Misdemeanors, A Simple Plan, Chinatown, and No Country for Old Men. Which, yeah, I
we'll
guess
get
these fuck you endings really get me.
we'll get there one day.
What do you mean one day? Didn't we talk about all three of these movies? All four
But
of these
not
movies
not Old
before?
Country for Old Men.
Oh, right, yeah. That one is gonna be a interesting day. Yeah, Full Metal Jacket's up there. We haven't talked about that, but that's gonna be interesting. Because I've been thinking about Full Metal Jacket for like the past like 5 months, just because I'm writing a story that's inspired by it, kind of. But yeah. These are all the movies I'd recommend. Oh, A Serious Man. That's the last one. If you like this movie, check out A Serious Man. It has a fuck you ending too. That's your warning. But it's also really fucking funny. Unbelievably funny. A Serious Man is probably one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Doesn't sound too serious then.
Yeah, no, it's kind of ironic. It's a Coen Brother movie, so it's about what you expect from a Coen Brother movie, where it's really funny but also kind of a fuck you. I don't know. What Coen Brother movies haven't made you guys watch so far?
That we have
Burn
seen.
After Reading.
We did
Yeah,
Fargo.
that one's pretty funny, but it's got kind of a dark fuck you ending. Then Burn After Reading, which is I thought that movie was fucking hilarious, but obviously that movie has a what the fuck did we just watch kind of movie.
Was it just those two? I don't think there was
Yeah,
any
might
other
have
one
just
that we
been those
did.
two. I'll have to keep that in mind then, because I've been on a Coen Brothers kick lately. Actually, I've been on a Woody Allen kick lately. I saw one, two, three. I saw four Woody Allen movies this week.
We have anything else?
What'd you guys think of like I guess the general presentation? You know, the direction, the acting.
Okay, I knew I was forgetting something. I've noticed, especially in the very first half of the film, a lot of scenes have very, very long shots with no cuts.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I always thought Woody Allen was a really underrated director because I think he's really, really good at blocking, and that's sort of what I mean. Where like he's just sort of long takes and like there's this one shot in this movie where like I remember he's like talking to someone while walking, and like we follow them, and then we go into the room and we like see them doing stuff in the room, and they're like moving around. I was like, it was like really complicated blocking. I was like, wow, it's like really impressive. But it's like a very subtle kind of impressive.
Is this a
I
constant thing
really
in
like.
most of his other movies, or is it just here?
I would say it's a constant thing from like I would his early movies not so much. Those were much more like straightforward, but I would say like maybe like Annie Hall onward, his movies kind of have like these much more interesting kind of blocking and sort of camera movements and whatnot. He definitely becomes much more like filmically interesting as he goes along.
Yeah, because I
Um
don't really see a whole lot of filmmakers go for something like this, like at all.
Spielberg does sometimes, but
It works
that's
really well for like intimate scenes,
yeah.
and it's a stylistic
He's a
choice that could pay off really well in the hands of the right person. And I think Woody Allen actually managed to achieve that very well in this film.
I think Woody Allen's one of the best writer directors because I feel like he's one of the only directors who's like known for like screenplays. Like, cause everyone watches his movies for the screenplay, but I feel like over the years he's gotten really good at like actually like having his movies be interestingly directed in a way that like supports the screenplay. Where like I feel like a lot of his movies has these like long takes, so the actors have room to breathe, but also like just to so almost make it feel more interesting, because like I feel like if there's a lot of cuts, because it's like these long takes, but it's long takes with two actors playing off each other and playing off the scenery, which I thought was really cool. Because like I don't know, it feels very like sitcom-y, but like in a good way. Like it feels like an elevated sitcom, if that makes sense. And Match Point I think would be an interesting movie for you guys to watch because that's just more of an attempt at doing like a regular thriller, and I feel like he proves that he's actually pretty good directing those too. Yeah.
Okay.
Almost feels like a play. Do you guys feel that? It felt kind of like a play almost, some of these
This
scenes.
movie? Not really.
And
No, just like I don't know, just some of the scenes were like it just like these long takes of like people talking and like they're just like in one room and sort of like I don't know. At points I thought like it almost I could see
I just
someone
took
making
that
sort of
as
a staged
Woody Allen
version.
basically communicating to us like how close these characters are to each other, or in some cases falling apart. I didn't really take that as like trying to make it feel like a stage play.
Yeah, that's fair. I just mentioned because I know he did get his start in theater somewhat because his first like his breakout movie was this movie called Played Against Sam, which was an adaptation of a play he wrote. Played Against Sam's amazing, by the way. It's like my third favorite. Yeah, it's good you mentioned the intimacy thing because a lot of his movies are romantic comedies, and I feel like he's pretty good at doing intimacy because he knows how to direct actors. I feel like most of his like direction is trying to support the performances, which is probably what you guys were thinking.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts? I don't know. I like the jazz music in the score. I thought kind of cozy.
I don't know. That's about it. I was gonna kick myself if I didn't mention that, and I nearly forgot.
All right, definitely two thumbs up for me.
It was definitely a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but as it went on, I know I say this for like a lot of movies that you recommend, but as it went on, I got more into it, and the end hit me like a fucking freight train in the best way possible.
Yeah, no, I liked this one, even with the ending being all kinds of Jesus.
All right, next week recommendation.
Okay. So we're gonna go with a director that we haven't talked about before, and I don't believe I've seen any of his movies. So this movie in particular is one that I've heard a lot about. I've never seen it before though. But I figured, you know what? I'll go in blind. I know Red definitely has seen this. I don't know about you, Patrick. But next week we are going to be talking about Whiplash by Damien Chazelle.
Ah,
Yeah, I love this movie.
I was looking at his filmography too, and he hasn't made much, but a lot of what he's made has gotten a lot of recognition. Like I'm sure you know of La La Land.
Yeah, he's made I think 5 movies, and I would say 3 of them are all pretty well known. 2 of them are more smaller, but like Whiplash, La La Land, and Babylon are probably like the big 3 movies that everyone knows him for. And then First Man, which is I haven't seen, but it's kind of like I heard it's underrated. And then his first movie, Guy Madeline on Park Bench, which I also know nothing about, but yeah, he likes jazz because like out of the 5 movies he's made, like 4 of them are about jazz, which is kind of funny.
Have you
But
seen
yeah,
Whiplash before, Patty?
I've seen most of it. I didn't catch it all, but I did at least see like the first like 40 minutes.
Okay.
I have a lot to say about this movie, so this is gonna be fun. All right, cool.
It also has J.K. Simmons, and I like J.K. Simmons, so this was kind of too hard to pass up.
He
Oh
won
yeah,
an
no,
Oscar for this
you're
role,
gonna
so
love this performance. This is one of JK's best. And
I
also, this has some of the funniest insults I've ever heard in a film. Or I genuinely remember like so many quotes from this movie. Fucking crazy.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. This is Always Sunny in Hollywood. We watch too many movies, but that's okay.